Chris Broussard now joining us via the Cowherd Global Satellite Network, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. You know, I said it to start the show, Chris, is that, you know, it's interesting that there's so much money in sports. It's so capitalized. It's so corporate that when I was young growing up, the stars spoke out. Russell and Kareem and Ali and Jim Brown. Stars spoke out. Now, not as much. There's far more, tens, often hundreds of millions of dollars to lose in sponsorships. That's why I feel LeBron is so rare. He has been willing 8 years ago. And he's mogul stage now. He was willing 8 years ago on the trip up to talk about Trayvon Martin. Why does it bother us so much? Not me particularly, but why does it bother so many people when athletes have opinions on politics?
Well, I think number one, we all I've even seen it with athletes myself. We love when they speak out about something we support. When they talk about issues that we agree with them on, we love it when they speak out. And I think that's regardless of race. But when they speak out about something we disagree with, then that's when we get angry. And that's why so many black athletes have been hesitant in the past to speak out, because they felt like most of white America or too many white people wouldn't agree with them. And what I would say is, in this instance, this murder of George Floyd and all that the black athletes are speaking about, because we've seen it with Tamir Rice and Eric Garner, and you can go on down the line. These are issues all Americans should really be supportive of. These are issues that you shouldn't fall on one side of the other. There may be different degrees to how bad you think police brutality is, but all of these situations that the players have protested, when we've seen them on videotape, those are cut and dry. And so I think in this situation, most Americans, if not all, should agree with the athletes speaking out. Let me address this, Colin, and what you said about the superstars. I agree. The superstar athletes, and LeBron has been tremendous. There's no question about it. But LeBron James is irreplaceable. LeBron James can say whatever he wants because the Los Angeles Lakers will not cut him. The NBA will not blackball him. He's that good. If Colin Kaepernick had been Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, a superstar, he would still be in the NFL, kneeling and all. There's no question about it. So the superstar black athletes have a leverage that the other athletes don't have. And I actually thought Kaepernick was more courageous than most people gave him credit for, because he was expendable. He was coming off the bench. They could have cut him and let him go, and nobody would have thought twice as soon as he started sitting and then kneeling for the anthem. So the superstar black athletes have the leverage. And Colin, I would also say they have a responsibility, because it's unfortunate that black athletes are called on to speak out and address these issues when their counterparts who aren't black don't have to. But because of the history and the contemporary situation in this country, our black athletes have a responsibility to do it, because they are the most irreplaceable African Americans. They are the wealthiest African Americans. They are the most well connected in terms to corporate America and the mainstream African Americans. And they are the most beloved African Americans. You have white kids and kids of all races growing up idolizing black athletes, listening to black athletes, in love with black athletes. They have a voice that most other African Americans do not have, and I think they need to use it.
You know, it's interesting. In these times, I've seen it with 9/11 and COVID, and in the situation this weekend, over the last week. I was really profoundly impressed with athletes. I also thought the mayor of Atlanta was remarkable. Social activist Killer Mike in Atlanta, the rapper. I thought he was absolutely, inarguably awe-inspiring. When you were on social media this weekend and you were listening to athletes or texting them and talking, do you believe there can be change? We can talk about all this, but there'll be a bad cop that will do a bad thing in another week, 2 or 3. We know this to be true. Do you really believe when you talk to athletes, they think this week there can be change?
That's a great question. I think some athletes have woke up. We use the term woke, but they've been awakened again to the realities of American life. Because look, when you become a superstar athlete and you're making millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, you can get, and you're treated like a king by people of all races. You can easily forget the struggles of the masses of African American people. And so I think for many, this is a reminder to them of what's going on. But as far as can things change, without question, things can change. People just have to want to do it. Colin, we saw 3-4 weeks ago, we saw armed militias of white Americans going to state capitals in Michigan and other places with assault weapons. And the policemen showed restraint. The policemen just dealt with them and they knew they had their rights as American citizens and nothing jumped off. And yet when we look at Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, other instances, and then not to mention the individual situations where blacks are unarmed and blacks are hands up sometimes. And yet they get assaulted by the policemen. They're treated in a much more aggressive manner. I'll say from my personal experience, Colin, I've never been stopped by policemen for no reason by myself. And I think it's because a lot of times you can't tell if I'm white or black if I'm driving in a car. But I have been stopped 3 times for no reason by policemen. All 3 times I was with African American men who were visibly like dark skinned, looked clearly black. One time with a professional athlete and no reason. We weren't breaking the law. We weren't speeding. We were just driving. And fortunately, nothing negative happened. But that's the reality of many African American people on a weekly or monthly basis where they're stopped for no reason.
No, Chris, you and I have talked about a lot of things off the air, and many of the athletes I interview, and they all share the exact same stories, and they're not happy to share them. There's a combination of anger and pain, anxiety when they share those stories. They're real. I bring Chris Broussard on the show. He didn't know I was going to ask him that question, and I didn't know that was going to elicit that response. These are real things people are struggling with in America. I'd be remiss if I did not ask you about just the latest, the Board of Governors for the NBA. Do we have a timeline? What is the latest? Do you believe it's moving in the right direction and quickly?
Yeah, I do believe it's moving in the right direction. And I think, Colin, it's going to be the 22 teams that come back, play about 6 to 8 regular season games, and then have a play-in tournament. And when I look at the options, I think that's the best one. I think it allows players to, play some regular season games, get in the flow, get some chemistry, get in some kind of game shape. And then it has the excitement of a play-in tournament for the last few seeds. And, you don't bring back the teams that have no shot of making the playoffs at all. You don't risk injury for their players or free agents. So I think the NBA appears to be headed in the right direction.
I want to ask you about something because I watched a lot of Los Angeles TV this weekend. And are you in Los Angeles now or back east?
I'm in New Jersey.
Okay, so I watched Los Angeles TV. Anytime you have protests, and it was overwhelmingly peaceful protests in Los Angeles, right. 99%. Then you have looters, often in different areas. And I'm interested in your perspective. Mine is always, they are often looting families that own one small store. And they have struggled for 3 months with COVID to keep the doors open, to survive, generationally survive with their business. And now some of those stores burn down, and they just simply don't have the funds. That American dream is over. That is my perception on some of the looting. What was yours?
Well, one, you hope and pray that those owners have insurance that hopefully will take care of them and protect them and cover them. But it's interesting because, like I said, I'm here in Jersey. 2 of the, if not the 2 most peaceful rallies and protests Colin, we're here in Jersey, in Newark and in Camden, which are two highly volatile cities in terms of violence. And so I was happy. My daughters even went to the one in Newark. I was very happy that these were peaceful. I also say this, Colin, and it's hard to tell, but many of these people who are looting are not actually protesters.
Right.
Some people are taking advantage of it. We've seen video on social media of people coming out of stores with items, and they're stealing things from these stores that are being looted. And so some people, you've got the protesters, some of whom may be violent or may be involved in looting. And then you've got a group of people who are just going to loot, just going to get merchandise, just going to cause mayhem. And then you may even have some people who are against the cause, who are there to stir up violence, and may even, not like African-American people in the cause that they're fighting for. And so there's a lot of different groups coming together in these rallies and marches and protests. And sometimes it's hard to differentiate who's doing what.
Appreciate you coming on today and sharing your experiences, Chris. Safety and best wishes to your family. I can't wait to see you in person soon. And thank you so much for stopping by our show today. Thanks, Colin. I enjoyed it. Have a good show. All right, Chris Broussard. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.